Ah, nothing like a fun day of frolicking at the beach. But venture past the surf, and things could get ugly. For this is where nightmares lurk. Armed with jaws, poison, and unimaginable powers. They say, enter at your own risk. But this time, it just happens to be true. A scuba diver, dead in the water. There's no sign of trauma, no equipment failure. Something down here could have killed him without leaving a mark. He was probably checking out the bizarre life forms in the Pacific Ocean. But sometimes the bizarre can be deadly. This is an electric ray. It's called the torpedo, and it's massive, weighing up to 80 pounds. Unlike other rays that swim with fins, the torpedo propels itself like a stealth bomber with a shark-like tail. And it's armed with an explosive weapon. It stuns and kills with a powerful electric shock. Modified gill muscles contract in waves. Victims are trapped under a dome of terror, then caught in the crossfire of an electrical current that racks them with repeated shocks. For the most part, the ray uses its weapon to shock fish for easier swallowing. But when startled by, say, a diver, the torpedo can unleash up to 50 volts. Enough to electrocute and ruin what was supposed to be a dream vacation. You don't have to be big or electrified to be a killer. Some come disguised in small, pretty packages. The blue-ringed octopus is barely bigger than a golf ball, scouring the tidal pools of the Indo-Pacific for treats. It's completely deaf, but makes up for it with keen eyes and a killer sense of smell. A crunchy little crab is clueless. A quick dash, a quick bite, and then a quick death. The poison paralyzes the hapless crustacean. After all, it's powerful enough to kill a human in just 90 minutes. It contains tetrodotoxin, and it's a trendy choice among poisonous animals. Pufferfish and cone snails use it too. The poison is made by bacteria living in their saliva glands. And it packs a powerful punch against prey, and when necessary, predator. Normally, this 8-legged slinky is a dull yellow with dark rings. But spook it, and tiny ink sacs under its skin rise to the surface and turn the rings a brilliant neon blue. A vibrant warning to play with this fella at your own risk. This horde of spiny lobsters is on a frantic hunt, not for prey, for protection. These horny-eyed, shy scavengers are normally found hiding in cracks and crevices. But fall storms force them out into the open, where they're vulnerable. The leader follows the current to deeper, safer waters. The others use their antennae to play the following game. Eventually, they reach the refuge of their new home, where they can once again be predators. Predators that capitalize on the dead. There's no fight or flee left in this guy, so all kinds of critters belly up to the dinner table. For once, lobsters are safe in a shark's presence. They make quick work of the carcass, leaving only bits of bone and teeth behind as evidence it ever existed in the first place. This little blue fish doesn't look very deadly. Guess we're not talking about the little blue fish. Stonefish hoover their meals up just like a vacuum cleaner, in one massive gulp. Sure, it may look slow. An easy target for a predator. Think again. 13 poison-tipped spines adorn its dorsal fin, and each contains a mix of paralyzing neurotoxins and tissue-destroying myotoxins. No wonder the stonefish is considered the most venomous fish in the world. It's a lethal threat to humans, too, especially since it looks like an ordinary rock in the ocean. The stonefish, an extraordinary killer. This guy's so ugly, he's cute. The striated frogfish, aka hairy frogfish. A good hair day, it isn't. But hunting's what's on this frogfish's mind. He settles down to the perfect camouflage, then goes to town, whipping a worm-like lure around on top of his head. The frogfish is fishing. Anything brave enough to investigate isn't long for this world. With skills like that, who cares about bad hair? Some have skills, others have equipment. Moray eels hide in rocks and reefs until nighttime, when they slink out to hunt. Jaw popping helps them breathe and makes them look ferocious. Two nostrils draw in water over a highly developed olfactory gland, which detects the scent of prey floating by. Here's where the equipment comes in. The outer jaws seize the fish. Then, a set of inner jaws go to work. Yes, moray eels have not one, but two sets of jaws. The second set acts as a claw machine and pulls the food into the eel's stomach. The pufferfish puffs up to double its size. Masterful move. The eel's determined to get his dinner. But it's an exercise in futility. The only way to win this battle is with a third set of jaws. Maybe things will go a little easier for this peacock flounder, who's eyeballing a nearby female. He thrusts his pectoral fin high in the air to get her attention. But that can also get the attention of predators. The more he tries, the more she rejects him. typical. It's a disastrous date, and about to get worse. A huge snapper is sniffing around. Luckily, he's curious, not hungry. Nothing like a near-death experience to get you in the mood. The two flutter around, releasing fertilized eggs into the water, then quickly go back to their separate corners on the seafloor. Legend has it that sea monsters live here, in the cold, dark waters of the Pacific. And guess what? They do. This beast is a giant Humboldt squid, and if you think it's a candidate for calamari, check this out. They can grow as large as a man. Without warning, they rise from the darkness to feed on fish at the surface. Sometimes they look like ghostly spirits. They turn white by opening and closing sacs of pigment in their skin. When alarmed or aggressive, they turn red, as in, beware. Their nickname, Red Devils. Few willingly tangle with Humboldt squid. But this filmmaker descends into the darkness to capture one-of-a-kind footage. At first, they're curious. Then, they turn aggressive. In the attack of the killer squid, tentacles grab his mask and regulator, threatening his air supply. Beating them back, he makes for the surface. It's not a dream or a legend. It's real. A real-life nightmare. Exotic, majestic, and completely toxic. The lionfish has long flowing fins to hide an arsenal of poisonous spines, and a flashy pattern to send a clear message to predators. Look, but don't touch. People tend to ignore the warning, which explains the 40,000 cases of lionfish poisonings every year. Symptoms range from severe pain to convulsions and even heart complications. Armed with a gaping mouth and voracious appetite, they cockily prowl the reefs for fish and invertebrates. The prey is herded into position. Again, a doomed little blue fish, confused, cornered, and consumed. Then they saunter off to search for their next course. Without a lot of predators to worry about, life's pretty good for these spiky sea creatures. Tube feet wriggle. Red stalks bristle. Those who touch it instantly regret it. This is the fire urchin. Like all sea urchins, the fire urchin is an echinoderm, a family of slow and spiny invertebrates. Other members include sea cucumbers and starfish. In fact, a sea urchin's body design is a lot like a balled-up starfish. Its plate-covered top has hundreds of spines dotted with poison-filled sacs that burst on contact. If that's not enough, they have another defensive weapon hidden in their spines. Jaws. They aren't real mouths, but they look like it. These grasping appendages clean, collect food, and defend, with even more poison. This guy's only about 8 inches wide, but he packs a hefty punch. So stay clear of the fiery red ball, or you might get burned. Let's face it, this shark looks like a freak. What's with the huge, flat head and bulging eyes? Hammerheads may be on the odd side of attractive, but they're mysterious, fascinating, and deadly. A huge olfactory cavity allows them to smell in 3D and snatch prey without even seeing it. So they're master hunters, even in the dark. Special pores, called the ampullae of Lorenzini, detect electromagnetic fields given off by other animals. And hammerheads have more than any other shark or ray in the world. They can pick up electrical currents down to 100 millionth of a volt, like the beating heart of a fish or a stingray gliding over sand. And now, for a slick move called the pin and pivot. Enter the spotted eagle ray, one of the hammerhead's favorite snacks. In an instant, one entire wing is gone, and it's left in a pool of blood. The shark actually uses its big, flat noggin to pin its prey to the ocean floor. Then it rotates and pivots to pick it up and chomp it up. So it may look funny, but the hammerhead is an evolutionary wonder. An agile, crafty, intelligent killer. Coral reefs attract some of the most beautiful fish in the world. Then there's this guy, the great barracuda. And what it lacks in looks, it makes up for with speed and wiliness. One of its best talents is ambushing prey. When the barracuda finds a target, it slices through the water, then slices through its prey. And not with one row of teeth. Try two. An inner row of large dagger-like teeth clamps down and holds it in place. Then an outer row of smaller teeth cuts it to pieces. It's an effective design that works well on fish or people. The great barracuda is responsible for 2 deaths and blamed for many more. So unless you want to end up on its dinner plate, stay out of the way. It might come as a surprise to see a seal in a nightmare show, but it's no mistake. Especially when it comes to the leopard seal. They out-hunt every other seal out there and even like to feed on their own kind. Reaching 12 feet long and 1,000 pounds, they're one of the Antarctic's top predators. And they back up their reputation with huge teeth that they sink into krill, fish, and penguins, especially penguins. penguins. Leopard seals top out at 25 miles per hour. But penguins are more maneuverable, so the leopard seal has no other choice but to change his game. He flops onto the ice for a land ambush. Finally, it looks like dinner's on the table. Unless you're smart enough to play dead until your killer looks the other way. In a genius escape, this penguin scoots himself free. This one doesn't. It's big, slow, and certainly not the scariest of predators. But give it some credit. Loggerhead turtles have massive heads, a powerful set of jaws, and only have to surface every 30 minutes or so to breathe. A sharp beak transforms it into a prehistoric monster for a slipper lobster. The outmatched crustacean is armed with little to defend itself. So all it can do is try to outswim the turtle. A battle of the slowest begins with a chase. And ends with a chomp. It's a ray that looks like a shark, that looks like a tool. And it's performing an underwater version of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, with that huge saw on the end of its face. It's called a rostrum, and all sawfish have one. Some can be as long as a person, but no matter the size, they all pretty much do the same thing. Defend against predators like sharks and detect prey with electromagnetic sensing pores, which comes in handy in murky water. But what we all want to know is, can the sawfish actually use its saw like a saw? Scientists say yes. Sawfish slash and stun prey with quick, powerful swipes, then pass over it and swallow it whole. A delicious end to a real-life horror flick. Some nightmares aren't just scary, they're sick. Notice the pearlfish perfectly camouflaged in the seagrass. Spook it, and it relies on an extreme and disgusting survival tactic. Enter the sea cucumber, a spiky, crawling feeding tube that actually provides a safe haven for the pearlfish. When threatened, the fish locates the cucumber's rear exit and then inserts itself, tail first, up into the intestines. The pearlfish is safe. The sea cucumber was too humiliated to comment. They come in all shapes and sizes. Colorful, blind, brainless blobs. Most are pretty harmless. Not this one. The box jellyfish is a highly evolved killer. Its venom ranks among the most deadly in the world. They don't just drift, they move. 6 eyes sit clustered on all 4 corners of their bell, 24 in total. Up to 15 tentacles grow up to 10 feet long, and each has about 5,000 stinging cells, which were triggered by this doomed fish. Toxins paralyze the victim to avoid a struggle that could damage the box's delicate tentacles. Then, dinner is served. A frozen treat locked in an agonizing scream. The poison is also lethal to humans, attacking the heart, nervous system, and skin cells. Victims can drown from shock or die of heart failure. Beaches in Australia are sometimes forced to close for the summer months due to box jellyfish blooms. Because the worst danger is the one you don't see coming. Or it's the one you see clear as day. Powering through the water up to 30 miles an hour, killer whales are hard to miss. And they didn't get that nickname for nothing. 4-inch-long teeth rip through their favorite prey with ease. They average over 20 feet long and weigh as much as 6 tons. But killer whales rely on a lot more than size and speed to be killers. Try teamwork and tactics, sometimes in groups of 40. This time, the target is a seal, and he's used for target practice. A teaching lesson, again and again. When practice is over, so is the seal. Even land can't stop their voracious appetites. The hungry orcas propel themselves onto the beach to snatch up sea lions, despite the risk of being stranded. But not all sea lions meet a quick end. One unfortunate pup is brought to the juvenile whales alive for them to once again practice their hunting skills. The killer whale, a top predator with a killer appetite. And now, a mantis shrimp interlude whose eyes are the most complex of the animal kingdom. They can see infrared, ultraviolet, polarized light, and focus with trinocular vision for enhanced depth perception. All the better to smash, spear, and eat you with. Like there isn't enough venom in the ocean already. The banded sea kraits is more deadly than most cobras. They're descended from the same ancestor, but these guys are specially designed for life in the water. Its right lung runs nearly the entire length of its 3-foot-long body, so it can hold its breath for about 30 minutes. A paddle-shaped tail propels it to the seafloor, where it can scope out its favorite prey, eels. Yes, a snake, acting like a fish, hunts a fish, then acts like a snake. and he's caught a whiff of something tasty. It latches on to the eel's face to keep it from squirming while the poison does its work. Neurotoxins paralyze the eel, and myotoxins destroy muscle tissue. Eventually, the eel loses the fight and suffocates, which frees up the banded sea crate to slither off for another meal. At first glance, it seems that we're moving on to a lighter note. Everyone loves cute clownfish, right? Right. But maybe not so much for their big, creepy friend right behind them. A sea anemone. Clownfish are immune to the sea anemone's paralyzing stingers, thanks to a thick coat of mucus, so they're protected from any predatory fish. In return, clownfish keep the sea anemone free of parasites, which makes them, in a way, friends with benefits. Still feeling the love? Not all predators are fast, or agile, or sneaky. You don't have to be if you're patient. Like the cone snail. Although it doesn't look like it has much choice. At least it's armed with a rock-hard shell to protect it as it scours the seafloor. Between its eye stalks is a long siphon that sniffs out prey, like this camouflaged blennyfish. A long tube called the proboscis edges toward the fish. Inside is the snail's secret weapon, a poison-tipped tooth that acts like a harpoon. The blenny is completely oblivious. Then, completely paralyzed, the cone snail gulps it down whole. So patience can be a virtue. Patience and poison. Maybe heading to a river is safer. Or not. Normally, catfish get served up on our tables, but it looks like those are turning. Meet the Wells catfish, a monster that can reach 9 feet long and weigh in at 200 pounds. A normal fishing pole won't get the job done. Legends tell of humongous specimens dragging fishermen to their doom. Okay, so maybe you won't get eaten alive by what you made for dinner. But the fish are being imported to rivers like this one in Spain, and they grow like gangbusters. Long whiskers covered with chemical receptors feel and taste things on the riverbed, so they're expert hunters. They devour the living and scavenge the dead. Bad for the local fish, good for the Wells catfish. Maybe the focus should shift back to the legends. They're masters of disguise. With 8 arms, hundreds of suckers, 3 hearts, wicked smarts, and an ink sac. What more could a cephalopod want? Octopuses are boneless creatures, soft and squishy, so they can stuff themselves into the smallest of cracks and holes. Then, their hunting skills kick in. A crab doesn't stand a chance. To see how pliable they really are, we put an octopus to the test. It stretches and squeezes through tunnels as small as a quarter. In its natural habitat, this ability helps it ambush prey and hide from predators. It sniffs out hidden food in the tanks and even figures out a way through the maze to find dinner. Forget about locks. This guy easily opens the tank's sealed covers and escapes. Now that's what we call a 00 octopus. Ooh, a jawfish. Sounds spooky, right? Well, consider this. He's not tossing his cookies. He's tossing his family. This mouth-brooding expectant father is aerating the eggs to help them develop. He'll keep them in his mouth until they're big enough to swim on their own. But let's face it, one swallow and he's a mass murderer. Speaking of murderers, piranhas have gotten a bad rap for decades. But they earned it. Really. Shark-like feeding frenzies. Teeth that puncture, shear, and strip victims down to nothing but bare bones. In gangs of up to 100, they search for easy pickings in the Amazon River. Like this unfortunate baby egret, who rings the dinner bell the second he hits the water. Monster jaws come running. It's over in minutes. But piranhas are more than just frenzied predators. They scavenge carcasses and even eat plants. So they school in large numbers for hunting and protection. At least there aren't any records of a person being eaten alive by piranhas. Not yet, anyway. Not all underwater critters live life at a frantic pace. Some like to lie around like slugs, literally. Sea slugs, or nudibranchs, are tiny, slimy, and pretty poisonous. Some produce poisons. Others absorb poisons from their prey. This sea swallow even chows down on the toxic stingers of the Portuguese man-of-war. The nudibranch absorbs them into its body to use for its own defense. So don't be fooled by pretty. Sometimes it can be pretty deadly. They're gigantic, with massive heads and teeth the size of a human hand. They have the biggest brain of any creature on Earth, and even provided inspiration for Melville's classic novel, Moby Dick. Sperm whales spend the majority of their time looking for food. But considering they need more than a ton of it a day, it's no wonder. Fish and squid are their favorite snacks. So with a kick of their powerful fluke, they sink a mile below the surface, where they'll hang out for up to 90 minutes. There's almost no light, so they send out powerful ultrasonic clicks. The returning echoes reveal both the size and location of prey. Like the giant squid, we've seen what they can do to a diver's face. But a real-life battle between a sperm whale and a giant squid has never been captured on film. Sucker marks on their skin and squid beaks in their stomachs are evidence that the war is being waged and probably being repeatedly lost by the squid. There's no way to know for sure, but our money's on the sperm whale. Black groupers have some game of their own. They pretty much suck down anything that gets too close. Except for these gobies, who, luckily for them, provide a special service. This patch of coral is a full-service cleaner station. A tiger grouper pulls in, and the gobies go to work, picking off parasites and dead skin. The fish is cleaned and buffed to a lethal shine. The goby spared from being gulped down by the grouper, at least for now. It's one of the deadliest predators in the water. Freshwater, that is. And it may look like the Wells catfish's cousin, but this guy's far more dangerous. The electric eel. It prowls the murky ponds and river basins of South America. And just one shock can knock a horse clear off its feet. Each 8-foot-long eel can generate 600 or 700 volts. That's more than 5 times a standard US electrical outlet. If a human's on the receiving end, sharp stabbing pain, uncontrollable muscle spasms, and even cardiac arrest can occur from just a few jolts. So what's the secret to producing this much electricity? The eel's organs are jammed into the top fifth of its body. The rest contains roughly 6,000 specialized cells called electrocytes. Charged ions flow into each of these cells and create a current that can kill prey without even touching it. The electric eel has no teeth. It's not particularly fast. Its gills can't extract enough oxygen from the water, so it has to surface every 10 minutes or so to gulp down air. And if that wasn't enough, it's pretty much blind. But the small electrical pulses it generates helps the eel navigate rivers, detect prey, and predators. This juvenile caiman thinks he's about to get an easy meal. All he gets is electrocuted. But that doesn't stop him. He goes for another. Then makes a smart escape. The eel remains master of its domain. They're poisonous, double-jawed, clever, and downright deadly. All of the world's waters are filled with critters that can kill. So beware the next time you go in the water. you may have an underwater nightmare of your own.
In the wild, death is just a part of life. But some expert killers make biting the dust a brutal affair. Anyone who crosses one of these assassins meets a grim fate. No goodbyes, no second chances, and no mercy. When it comes to killing, these predators bring the pain. Their victims' final moments are anything but peaceful. There's no doubt that death by crocodile attack is a bad way to go. This guy only eats about once a week, but he makes it count. He heads out into the brackish waters with just one tactic in his toolkit. Whether a wildebeest, a boar, or even a barely there bird, this predator has mastered the skill of stealth. In fact, when hunting, almost every action this crocodile makes is to hide and disguise its deadly intentions. With little more than its eyes and nose visible, he lurks to avoid detection. He can sense prey from a distance by detecting the slightest movement in the water. On top of all that, he can hold his breath for more than an hour, which means the croc can attack silently from below. So, it's no surprise this wallaby hasn't noticed the salty's arrival. With just one snap of his jaws, it's game over. A large croc's bite force has been compared to that of a T-Rex. Resistance is futile. A croc usually has just one chance to ambush and snatch his prey before it escapes. So the stealth attack is his best chance of success. But grabbing large prey is only half the battle. The croc performs a death roll, turning and twisting in the water, drowning its prey and tearing them into bite-sized pieces. All he has to do now is swallow. This wasp is looking for a warm, cozy place to lay her eggs. An unsuspecting caterpillar is the preferred choice. One stab, and this caterpillar's life is no longer her own. She keeps feeding on leaves, while inside her body, tiny wasp larvae are feeding on her. They keep their lunch alive by making sure they don't touch vital organs. After a few weeks, the kids have fattened up and are ready to leave home. The wasp babies literally chew their way out. But they're so surgical, the caterpillar often lives through the ordeal, whether she wants to or not. The larvae start spinning cocoons where they will grow and transform into adults. In some cases, it is thought that a few larvae stay behind in their host, keeping it under their control. Because even now, it acts on their behalf, spinning a silken blanket to conceal the brood, and acting as a bodyguard for its own parasites. Their zombie protector doesn't even stop to eat until it finally starves to death. The adult wasps emerge with one main purpose: to breed and lay a clutch of eggs inside another unfortunate host. The Great Barrier Reef, one of the world's natural wonders. But beneath the water's surface, a deadly predator waits for the right moment to strike. Once a year, green sea turtles swim for hundreds of miles to get to this tiny isolated beach along the Great Barrier Reef. They've come to lay their eggs. After a long night of digging and laying, this mama turtle heads back to the ocean to rest. Her eggs are safe for now, but she is not. The turtle shares these waters with her worst nightmare, the tiger shark. This magnificent predator is at the top of the Great Barrier Reef food chain. They have the most diverse diet of any shark and will eat almost anything. But today, they're here for one specific delicacy. The green turtle's secluded oasis is about to become a watery grave. This female tiger shark has excellent vision, an amazing sense of smell, and the ability to detect minute electric fields. All the turtle can do is hide motionless among the coral, using her shell as camouflage. They can stay underwater for up to 2 hours, but the turtle can't hide forever. She swims to the surface, and the patient and cunning tiger shark is waiting. 14 feet and 1,400 pounds of finely tuned predatory menace. Green sea turtles have a fatal weakness. Thick shells may protect their internal organs, but they can't retract their heads or flippers. The shark bites off the turtle's flippers. There is no chance of escape. Her powerful jaws and serrated teeth pierce and crush the turtle's shell. The shark spins in a death roll, which tears its helpless prey apart. This mother turtle has paid the ultimate price for her young. But all is not in vain. 2 months later, her precious eggs hatch, and a horde of baby green turtles struggle their way to the water. The surviving females will eventually make their own journey back to the isolated island to reproduce. And the tiger sharks will be waiting. Alone, these ants don't look like much. Small, pesky, perhaps an easy target. But when you put hundreds of thousands of them together, they are an army of death. These are African driver ants. Traveling in groups of up to 22 million strong, they invade an overwhelmed territory. And with no allegiance to any particular land, they march from place to place, pillaging until resources are diminished. Anything that remains in their path is swiftly consumed. They are blind, so they can't see what's ahead of them. Instead, these ants use antennae to detect the movement of prey. Armed with a tough exoskeleton and machete-like jaws, they infest areas and swarm victims, butchering insects piece by piece. Up to 100,000 in a single day, but always marching on. Even this crustacean and his home aren't safe from this land-dwelling mass. Storming the crab in his domain, they eat him from the inside out. For this territorial army of millions, nothing is ever enough. A skilled hunter strikes when prey least expects it. These covert killers are masters of the sneak attack. Inside this cave in Puerto Rico live thousands of bats. Agile predators in their own right. Tonight, they are the hunted. Because when the sun sets, a slithering bat assassin emerges, the Puerto Rican boa. Welcome to the Cueva de los Culebrones, the cave of the long snake. Measuring 7 feet, the boas aren't venomous or particularly fast. But they know a clever trick. Aware that the bats need to hunt, the snakes set their trap, slithering up to the mouth of the cave and then uncoiling. Just 25% of the snake's body stays on the rock as they hunt by sense of touch. These bats don't know that they are flying through a fatal gauntlet. Eventually, an unfortunate bat will get too close to the snake's mouth. Using his strong muscles, the boa wraps his body around the bat twice and squeezes to kill. Then, in true snake fashion, he eats his prey whole. It's a plot twist the bat never saw coming. The great white shark is the ocean's ultimate hunter. Justifiably, it's the shark's mouth that gets most of the attention. 300 serrated teeth, arranged in 7 deadly rows, work together as a saw to rip prey apart. He has an estimated bite force of over 4,000 pounds per square inch. That's more than a hyena, lion, and tiger bite combined. But its mouth isn't the great white's only terrifying feature. They're also nearly invisible stalkers. Their dark backs and white underbellies help them blend in from both above and below. They're also equipped with incredible skills to find their prey. With a superhero sense of smell, the shark can sniff out a single drop of blood, floating in 10 billion drops of water. Their other senses are also unbelievably powerful. Ear openings above their eyes that hear the tiniest of ripples. Eyes designed to see in daylight or at night. And an amazing sixth sense, which allows the shark to detect an electric field. There's nowhere in the ocean where prey can hide. Today, all of these powers are tuned in to finding one hapless seal. The seal is fast, but he's no match for Jaws. When the shark is ready to go in for the kill, it launches an attack from below. The great white is one of the most feared predators in the ocean, for good reason. Death lurks at the bottom of this pit. A ferocious newborn hunter called an antlion. Its parents were simple flying insects. The larvae is a mini monster with a savage set of jaws. Once hatched, it goes to work on a fiendish contraption. A pit in the sand, just 2 inches deep. But for some, it's a death trap. An unsuspecting ant edges closer to the pit. The antlion showers sand over the ant, creating a landslide that delivers lunch right to its jaws. It drags the ant underground to suck out its insides. The meal over, the antlion simply rebuilds his trap and waits for the next guest to drop in for dinner. In the deepest ocean, a little-known carnivore unleashes a reign of terror. Rapid moves, shape-shifting, and sneak attacks are just a few of his many skills. At 5 feet long, he's not afraid to get up close and personal. Meet the Humboldt squid, or as he's also known, the Red Devil. The name comes from their red color and their notoriously bad attitude. When threatened, he will lash out with swift and nimble ferocity, all tentacles and fury. And his agile aggression is excellent when hunting. At 100 pounds, this squid can eat pretty much all he wants. And he's highly skilled at grabbing what he needs. Using his tentacles like a whip, he sucks the meal into his razor-sharp beak. But it seems to save the worst for its own kind. These guys are cannibals. And it appears the bigger the squid, the more they like to attack and eat their own kind. Today, the squid is thwarted by a massive cannon shot of ink. Which will probably just leave this hungry red devil ready to attack again. The snake is well known as one of the animal kingdom's most frightening and efficient killers. But just imagine if snakes could fly. In the jungles of Southeast Asia, an unlikely threat watches from above. This is the Chrysopelia snake, also known as the flying snake. Specialized rigid scales allow him to grip vertical surfaces. With almost Spider-Man powers, he climbs up and out to the tip of a branch, drops down into a J-shaped form before he takes to the air. Potentially able to soar distances nearly 800 feet, this snake's aerial acrobatics are gravity-defying. To achieve lift, the snake morphs its round body. By sucking in its abdomen, the snake is able to flatten its torso, doubling its width to make a somewhat concave surface. Then, forming an S shape, it undulates sideways as it flows through the air, creating whirls of wind that act as lift-generating wings. It all makes for an incredibly effective airstrike. As this unsuspecting gecko is about to discover. The sky is one of the last places to expect a snake attack, which is why this swooping serpent is so deadly. For many animals, killing is necessary to survive. But some predators' kill tactics means a slow, agonizing death for their prey. The ocean is no stranger to dangerous predators. Gangs of fish, lone hunters, tricksters. Yet one clever pod makes a bigger wave than all the rest. The killer whale lives up to its name. But these guys don't just kill. What makes these predators so brutal is they kind of look like they enjoy it. Living in oceans throughout the world, their hunt is a highly efficient, highly coordinated affair. Using echolocation to communicate, this pod of Antarctic orcas keys in on a resting Weddell seal. Rather than kill the seal right away, the whales choose to have a little fun. Moving in unison, they strike, unleashing a high tide of fury. If one wave isn't enough, they do it again. And when they successfully knock him off the ice, they put him back up and wave wash him again. But this is nothing compared to their next favorite hobby. Weddell in the middle. This morbid sport may last for 2 hours. Before they finally devour their seal and move on to the next object of torment. The Japanese honeybee may not seem capable of slow and utter destruction. Every day, he carries out his household chores, pollinating the flora, producing honey, and feeding his queen. But it's all done with one ultimate goal in mind: to preserve and defend his colony. Predators beware. Hell hath no fury like a honeybee. Apparently, this Japanese giant hornet didn't get the memo. Armed with a tough exoskeleton impenetrable to the bee's stingers, he locates the honeybee's hive and plots a colony invasion. Unaware of the inferno about to be unleashed. Hundreds of bees rally to defend what's theirs, and as one, transform into an ingenious killing machine. Swarming, they trap the hornet in a deadly buzzy prison and literally turn up the heat. By violently vibrating their flight muscles, they raise the core temperature of their death sphere to 115 degrees Fahrenheit, as hot as Death Valley in July. This hornet is toast. The invader is roasted alive. It's such a deadly tactic that even some honeybees don't survive. With the hornet dead, the secret location of their prized colony is safe. So it goes. If you fight with fire, you'll be sure to burn. For these meat eaters, killing is not a race, it's a marathon. In the waters of South America, all seems peaceful. But below the surface, it's a different story. Here lurks one of nature's most infamous river predators. The piranha is a flesh-eating fish that nightmares are made of. And it doesn't hunt alone. This cold-blooded band is big, up to 100 strong in a single shoal. And initiation is easy. Just show up. They cruise the freshwater rivers as if looking for trouble. Successful scavengers, rotting carcasses become easy, efficient meals. But sometimes, when the fish have been without food, starvation leads to bloodshed. And this unsuspecting river rat, known as a capybara, has no idea he's the next target. Tracking their prey through the murky river, the hungry piranhas move in. They slay by swarming, and it's not quick. Small, powerful bites take the capybara down, but they don't kill it. Instead, they eat their victim while he's still alive. It's a full-on feeding frenzy, with no chance of escape. In minutes, the feast is over, leaving nothing but a trail of blood. The peaceful English countryside. What better place for young life to frolic and play? But these little bundles of fur aren't what they seem. They're stoats, relatives of the weasel, one of the most efficient killers of any mammal. The playful antics of these young kits are just a warm-up for the serious business ahead. At just 12 weeks old, they're fully independent and ready to hunt for themselves. Their favorite meal is 10 times bigger than they are. A stoat may be tiny, but what it lacks in size, it makes up for in stamina. It knows it's too dangerous to pounce on the rabbit straight away, so it wears it down by chasing it and chasing it. Nearly a mile at full sprint. The prey begins to flag, but his pursuer still has energy to burn. The rabbit might weigh 4 pounds or more. The stoat barely cracks 4 ounces. But it overwhelms the larger animal with sheer ferocity. Instinct tells it what to do next. A bite to the back of the neck, and the rabbit is now a very large lunch. To add insult to injury, the young hunter will take over its victim's burrow and continue its reign of terror over the meadow. Treachery and betrayal are alive and well in the animal world. These double-crossers leave their conscience at the door. Sometimes the most ferocious animal fights are waged within a single species. When it comes to the world of the capuchin monkey, that couldn't be more true. In fact, more male capuchins die at the hand of other capuchins than of any other predators. These monkeys live in organized competing gangs with up to 35 members, each headed by an alpha male. As their leader, the alpha commands respect from the crew, forming allies with the other monkeys, with one objective: protect his domain. Today, a rival gang dared to cross into this kingpin's stomping ground. But he's not about to risk his own neck in a fight. Instead, he calls in his lackeys, who are all too willing to step in. Fast, agile, and strong, they use their hands and tails to swing swiftly into battle. In today's turf war, it's not about numbers. One unlucky minion steps up, and then it's on. Choked almost to death, the invader monkey surrenders and runs away. Bruised and bloodied, the home gang keeps control of their turf until the next violent clash against their own kind. From lovers to lunch. Thinking you're safe can be a fatal mistake. No, this is not a Hollywood B movie. The snail's eye stalks really are pulsing, a sure sign it's under alien control. Parasites have invaded its body. This snail is now on a march towards destruction, duped by his own lunch. As a healthy snail grazes, it occasionally ingests bird droppings, usually no biggie. But this bird is infected with flukeworm parasites. The flukeworm eggs hatch and creep into the snail's eye stalks, which appear to flash and pulse as the little bugs squirm. Now for the death march. The flukeworms force the snail to head out into broad daylight instead of hiding in the shade. Hungry birds spot the pulsating beacon, and the flukeworm's twisted life cycle starts all over. There she is, playing it cool, looking seductive, irresistible to any guy who crosses her web. Feast your eyes upon the Australian redback spider. She's known to kill humans, but in true femme fatale fashion, it's the males of her own species that become her target. When ready to mate, the much smaller males hang on the edge of the web to gauge the female's interest. It appears this female likes the attention. He's lucky. only 20% of male redbacks get the chance to mate. But his luck is about to run out. He begins his conquest by inserting one of two pedipalps into her. Once the deed is done, that's when our femme fatale strikes. By eating the male while they mate, it will actually extend their chances of reproducing. Mixing pain with pleasure gives the couple more bang for their buck. This fatal attraction wasn't just another dinner date. If you thought the Australian redback spider was gruesome, just wait until you meet her cousin. And her kids. Dozens of freshly hatched black lace weaver spiders are hungry. For a meal only mom can provide. She lays a second batch of eggs, and the babies eagerly feast on their unborn brothers and sisters. As they grow, their appetites get bigger too. What's a mother to do? She has one last source of emergency food: herself. She signals them by tapping the web, and her little ones gather round. Their killer instinct suddenly switches on, and they attack. The mother's insides dissolve, and the babies suck out the liquid meal. In 3 weeks, they'll disperse to lead solitary lives. And the females will one day make their own ultimate sacrifice for their babies. Mother Nature doesn't coddle the young. And in some cruel corners of the animal kingdom, babies die before they're even born. Nowhere does the fight for survival start as early as it does in the realm of the tiger shark. This shark is ready to become a mom, and her future babies are already in competition. She mates with as many males as she can, eventually producing about a dozen embryos. And that's where things start to go downhill. With 2 uteri, a shark can only bear 2 children at a time. So in utero, it's war. Each unborn shark has one goal: its sole survival. They will turn on each other and methodically start to cannibalize their siblings and gain strength. When all are devoured, the sibling slayer moves on to its mother's unfertilized eggs and eats those. A phenomenon called oophagy. For the baby shark, it's kill or be killed. Once they are born, they are immediately abandoned. Luckily for them, they've already gone through survival training and are clearly able to fend for themselves. Hyenas already have a pretty bad rap. Between the snarling, the scavenging, and the blood-curdling laugh, these animals don't need another characteristic to make them scary. But we found one: deadly sibling rivalry. These 190-pound predators live in a strict hierarchy. Like the military, every hyena has a rank. The higher your rank, the more you get to eat. Females take the top spots and, like a royal family, pass their status on to their children. So whatever your mother's rank is your rank. But there's one problem. A mother hyena can't always provide for her young, and the least aggressive cub will least likely survive. Which means the struggle between siblings for dominance starts almost immediately after birth. Weighing less than 3 pounds, the hyena pups are born with open eyes and sharp teeth, which they promptly turn on each other. Eventually, 2 sister pups figure out the best way to win is to eliminate the third. They attack. But they don't kill her quickly. Instead, they limit her access to their mother's milk, eventually starving her to death. If they're lucky, the surviving sisters will have little killers of their own one day. High in a Korean forest, a mother parrotbill is tending to her nest. Her newborns are fighting. The weaker one is pushed out of the nest to his death by his unusually large brother. It seems like sibling rivalry gone bad, and it's even worse than it looks. Earlier, a common cuckoo spent days spying on the parrotbill. While the parrotbill is away, the cuckoo swoops in, destroys an egg, and lays one of her own. Mom returns none the wiser. The cuckoo's egg is much bigger, but she doesn't seem to notice. The imposter egg usually hatches first, and the new mother treats the baby as her own. She instinctively cares for any chick that's in her nest. It's a sinister strategy called brood parasitism, and this trick is just the beginning. One of the parrotbill's own chicks hatches, but it's born next to a deadly imposter. Killing works up an appetite. Below, a graveyard testifies to the baby cuckoo's efficiency. Soon the imposter is too big for the nest, but the unsuspecting mother keeps feeding it and cleaning up after it. She will slavishly care for her real baby's killer even as it outgrows her. It may be cuckoo, but this con artist knows a good deal when it sees one. They say life isn't fair, but neither is death. In a dog-eat-dog world, sophisticated killers prey on the weak. Whether you're the hunter or the hunted, every day is do or die. Bite, sting, kill. You have to have ice in your veins to take out your victims by deadly poison or sheer strength. Everywhere on Earth, these lethal predators come to the fight with loaded weapons. And these cold-blooded killers show their victims no mercy as they battle to win the upper hand or seize their next meal. In the water, Danger lurks at any depth. Cutting through the chill is the star of the summer blockbuster, the great white shark. The world's biggest flesh-eating fish. Its weapon of choice? Up to 300 serrated steak knives, which grow right from its gums. Each jaw carries several rows of deadly blades that are replaced all throughout its life. Every 8 months, new teeth advance from the back of the mouth like bullets in an ammo belt. One of the most wide-ranging predators, it hunts in all 4 oceans. In waters no higher than your waist, or over a half-mile deep. It eats dolphins, dead whales, even other great whites. But today, this great white is going after seals. For maximum surprise and power, the shark floors it. Not all strikes succeed, but the shark rarely misses twice. When a large prey fights back, the shark avoids injury by leaving it to bleed to death. Once it's safe, it moves in for the feast. A great white's teeth are designed for stabbing, not chewing. It has no molars, so it grips prey and thrashes its body, twisting off flesh and swallowing it whole. But here's why the great white is really called Jaws. A bite that may pack nearly 2 tons of force, 20 times the power of the human jaw. A sharp bite from a great white isn't the only cold shock you can get in the water. One of South America's apex predators lurks in murky tributaries of the Amazon River. And it uses what could be the strangest hunting tactic of all. This 6-foot-long animal produces what almost no other animal can conjure: a killing shock of electricity, known as the electric eel. It's a unique creature, more closely related to a catfish than an eel. First, it produces a small electric field, sensing distortions in it to navigate and to find other animals. These fish have no idea that their heartbeats and muscle action are drawing a killer closer. The electric eel probes likely hiding spots. And it's not going to rest until it's found a meal. Sensing prey, the eel flushes it out into the open and delivers its death blow. 500 volts, enough to stun an adult human. The electricity is turned off until hunger moves the eel to hunt again. Now satisfied, the eel disappears into the murk. But it's not just the murky rivers where prey needs to be careful. This hunter on Indonesian's reefs seems to be doing everything it can to draw attention to itself. The cuttlefish. An alien creature with 8 arms growing directly from its head. A large brain shaped like a donut. And 3 hearts that pump bright blue blood. This boneless, highly intelligent blob propels itself through the tropical oceans using jets of water and steering fins. Like their squid and octopus relatives, cuttlefish have the ability to instantly change color by altering the pigments in their skin. They're often called the chameleons of the sea. In a fraction of a second, they can disappear into the background or become a pulsating ball of flashing colors that almost seem to hypnotize their prey and enemies. One member of the tribe goes to great lengths to be as flashy as possible. The flamboyant cuttlefish is well named. This small but feisty beast prefers to walk along the bottom of the seabed rather than swim. If threatened, it stands its ground and unleashes a dazzling show of color. This may act as a warning to predators that it's poisonous if swallowed. It prowls the sandy seabed hunting for small prey, like shrimp. And it carries a concealed weapon. Hidden among the 8 stubby arms surrounding its mouth is a pair of hunting tentacles. When prey is in range, the tentacles are slowly aimed, then fired at blinding speed. The shrimp is captured and fed to the cuttlefish's parrot-like beak. And then it goes looking for more. The flamboyant cuttlefish is one of the deadliest little hunters on the reefs of Indonesia. And we do mean little. Speed, bite force, and electric jolts have nothing on the chilling power of venom. Of all the predators that use venom, the most notorious may be this one. The king cobra thrives in the forests and plains of southern Asia. His lethal venom and deadly fangs are renowned. All take caution when he patrols the forest, knowing that an accidental encounter could turn deadly. In one bite, it delivers more venom than almost any other snake. Enough to kill 20 men in less than an hour. or knock down the biggest creature in the jungle. This cold-blooded killer's favorite food is other snakes. But that doesn't make other creatures any less wary. They give him plenty of room to hunt. A tree offers the cobra an excellent vantage point to spot his next meal. And this rat snake tops the menu. The rat snake grows up to 7 feet long, but carries no venom. The cobra can spot prey from nearly 100 meters. And it's found lunch. The rat snake is looking for his own meal and detects its namesake prey. But it's unaware that it too is being stalked. The rat is about to be saved by an unlikely savior. The cobra can detect movement through vibrations in the ground, but its direction finder is its tongue. The cobra can strike from over 3 feet away. The rat snake's resistance is futile. The cobra injects deadly venom through its fangs, like toxins through a syringe. The venom floods the rat snake's nervous system. First comes dizziness, then sleepiness, finally paralysis. The cobra gulps its dinner whole. It can expand its jaws to accommodate a supersized meal, and its teeth face backward to move the meal along. Digestion is already starting. Venom is eating away at its victim. The rat snake may still be alive, but locked in a coma from which it will never awaken. Even as babies, these venomous reptiles can send a shiver through their potential prey. This little Aussie snake can kill anything its mother can. From the day it hatches. It's an inland taipan, the most venomous snake on Earth. Taipans stalk the Australian interior, searching for rodents, and armed with a weapon that could drop 100 men. A baby taipan's venom is no less toxic. This infant is on her very first hunt. Instinct tells her to target exactly what her mother would. One quick bite and the venom begins its deadly work, destroying tissue and causing convulsions. She has killed an adult-sized prey with ease. Making a meal of it is another story. Then, the tiny serpent picks up a faint odor in the grass. Something more her size. In looks and in killing power, baby inland taipans are a chip off the old block. Asia and Australia aren't the only places with venomous serpents hunting for their next meal. Cold, calculating eyes, slithering scales, flickering tongue. The African continent is filled with lethal lone hunters. But this animal is one of the most deadly. The puff adder. What makes this snake the most dangerous in Africa? Responsible for thousands of human deaths a year? The art of surprise. This solitary hunter is pretty good at hiding. Cryptic colors and chevron patterns perfectly camouflage the snake's 3-foot-long body. So prey has no idea they're being hunted. But that's only the puff adder's first surprise. With a target in sight, it's time to strike. With a split-second flick of its head, the snake bites. 350 milligrams of venom flows into the rat. The adder hangs back. For a moment, it seems the rat may survive. But soon the venom takes hold, breaking down the rat's muscles and tissues until it dies. Then the puff adder gets to work and swallows his meal whole, leaving no evidence behind. The puff adder isn't the only deadly serpent in Africa. This one holds the title for the fastest land snake in the world, the black mamba, named for the ink-black color of its coffin-shaped maw. At up to 18 feet per second, the black mamba can move faster than most people can run. And you'd better run, because the black mamba also has one of the fastest acting venoms in the snake world. This mouse tries to escape into its burrow. But the black mamba is perfectly capable of hunting in tight spaces. It makes killing all the faster. Think you can hide in the trees? You may need a plan B. The black mamba is not only an adept climber. Its Latin name, Dendroaspis, actually means tree asp. This chameleon doesn't have anything to worry about today. But these little fledglings never see it coming. Still, a black mamba is deadliest when cornered on land. This one senses something right outside its lair. Turns out, it's one of the deadliest predators in all the land. A lion. The small snake doesn't seem to stand a chance against the king of the jungle. But in this case, the mamba strikes first and fastest. Within a half hour, the killer cat succumbs to the black mamba's deadly venom. Too bad it's too big to eat. Just 10 to 15 milligrams of mamba venom can kill a full-grown man in a half an hour, and one bite can contain 10 times that amount. That's called overkill. Before an anti-venom was developed, the mortality rate from a black mamba bite was a staggering 100%. These days, just hope there's a dose of anti-venom within minutes of you. Because if not, this may be the last smile you ever see. Chilling speed, split-second strikes, fast-acting venom. In the world of venomous killers, the African black mamba is a terrifying triple threat. And it's not just snakes that have ice in their veins when it comes to killing. Scorpions are built for battle. They have their own body armor, an exoskeleton that glows in the dark, strong pincers coated with fine hairs sense prey and crush enemies. They can survive in harsh conditions and go as long as 6 months between meals. And then there's that venomous sting. They use it to immobilize their prey, and sometimes that prey is each other. When one scorpion trespasses on another's turf, it's time to lock and load. They use their tails as swords, each trying to breach the other's defenses. If a sting penetrates the armor, it's certain death and digestion. Scorpions can't eat solid food. They have to use enzymes to break it down externally. The victor cannibalizes its brother into a scorpion soup. Scorpions aren't the only 8-legged predator with a frosty relationship with their prey. Many spiders are notorious for their killer appetites. But there's one 8-legged eater whose hunger is colossal. The Goliath bird-eater spider, up to an astonishing 12 inches across. This tarantula from South America shows that big spider equals big food. Like snakes, bats, rats, insects, and mice. The Goliath has weak eyesight, but it can sense vibrations in the air and through the ground with highly sensitive hairs. And right now, it feels dinner. Massive 1-inch fangs inject the mouse with paralyzing venom. Then, the spider regurgitates digestive juices that break down the rodent into a liquid meal. Mouse stew, anyone? And just in case you thought the name Bird Eater was false advertising, it's not. The Goliath earned its name by catching and consuming food as big as young birds. The Goliath bird eater is an impressive predator, and it takes a massive appetite to be the biggest and baddest spider in the world. These killers don't just use venom to conquer their prey. Some use it to deter other cold-blooded killers. Looks can be deceiving. This slow and squishy rough-skinned newt is actually one of the most toxic animals on Earth. It's covered in a muscle-paralyzing poison called TTX, which is 10,000 times more deadly than cyanide. If a predator eats him, it's usually their last meal. A hungry garter snake is sizing it up. The snakes have evolved partial immunity to TTX, but some newts are more poisonous than others. It's an evolutionary arms race between predator and prey. The newt sends a warning signal. And the snake decides it's not worth the risk. Another predator is less cautious. This voracious bullfrog decides to go for it, swallowing the newt whole. Now, it's a race between the frog's stomach acid and the newt's poison. The deadly TTX does its work. And the newt crawls from the belly of the beast, none the worse for wear. It's a comeback worthy of Rocky Balboa himself. Twitching antenna, bulbous eyes, deadly claws. They kill with unearthly speed. They stalk prey in slow motion, edging ever closer. And once in range, they deliver death in a flash. In 1/20th of a second, a mantis's spiked forelegs dart out and snatch its quarry. Before the target can process what's happening, its brain is being eaten. Mantises also aren't above taking a bite out of each other's head. And that's just the appetizer, because the praying mantis can eat every part of its kill, from head to foot to wing. Ambushing butterflies is one thing, but that super speed really comes in handy when attacking far deadlier insects. But it's not just bugs on the menu. This young mantis is about to be lunch for a much larger frog. So it's nice to have a mom who's bigger and faster than your foe. Frog legs, anyone? Beware. Once the lightning-fast praying mantis gets you in its clutches, you haven't got a prayer. There's one creature on land that truly deserves the nickname Jaws. The chompers of the rock python seem small, but their power speaks volumes. Growing more than 20 feet long, it's one of the largest snakes in the world. Watch where you step, because the rock python will bite if bothered. It eats almost anything it can swallow, and it can swallow almost anything. Like many predators, it hunts while hiding, preparing for an ambush. Sensors on its snout can detect whether prey is nearby. Springbok. In a two-pronged attack, the python grips the prey in its teeth. Then it deploys another weapon: bondage. Each time the springbok exhales, the python squeezes tighter. Every breath becomes shallower as the python tightens its grip, until death by strangulation. Now, the jaws really perform. Pythons don't chew prey. They don't even dismember it. They swallow it whole, starting from the head. Jaw power makes it possible. Both jaws are divided in two, a total of 4 moving parts, all of them flexibly attached to the skull by tendons and ligaments. Each moves separately from each other, allowing the python to inhale prey 3 times wider than its mouth. Its teeth curve inward to keep prey from slipping out. Thanks to such flexible jaws, the python glides over its meal like a sock over a leg. Washboard muscles move prey through the stomach. Its stomach acid is so powerful, it will dissolve bone. The python goes through one of the longest digestions on record. And it may not eat again for a year. Bitter strength isn't just used to catch a meal. In the cold-blooded realm of the reptile world, battles over mating rights can be very heated. When out on the hunt in its tropical domain, the monitor lizard likes to fly solo. His forked tongue helps him sniff out decaying fish, flesh, and females. But when love is in the air, potential suitors come out of the woodwork. And with this quick-tempered lizard, that means instant competition. These scaly battles can last for up to 45 minutes. This isn't a fight to the death, but rather a display of dominance and strength. A heavyweight sumo match with claws, where the loser gets pinned underwater. The triumphant male gets the girl, but he better watch out. Female monitors are just as ready to scrap. They'll fight their mates for food. When it comes to survival among these lizards, there's no such thing as one big happy family. In 1910, a Dutch lieutenant reported sighting large reptilian creatures roaming the mysterious islands of Indonesia. They possess scales tough as chainmail, claws keen as knives, and a never-ending appetite for flesh. Old sea maps used to warn, here there be dragons. They very well may have been talking about Komodo dragons. Far from creatures of myth, these very real dragons can grow up to 10 feet in length and weigh over 300 pounds. That much mass requires a lot of fuel. And these lizards are gross consumers. Emphasis on gross. Deer, goats, oxen, bones, hooves, and hides. A ravenous Komodo eats it all, eating up to 80% of its own body weight in one feeding. But that's why they can afford to be patient and cunning hunters. A Komodo targets its prey and delivers one venomous bite. The dragon then tracks the debilitated prey until it succumbs to the poison, which can take days. Some Komodos have to fight for their meal. When this vicious clash of the titans is over, one thing will be certain: the victor will have worked up an even mightier appetite. The next time you visit the islands of Indonesia, you may want to heed the warning on the old sea maps. Because here there be dragons, and here they be hungry. Australia, paradise for unique creatures found nowhere else on Earth. The northeast of the country is lush and tropical. But in the vast interior, there is no jungle and almost no water. This is the outback, a savage realm where only the toughest predators can survive, including a speed demon giant lizard, the Perenti. This monster monitor can grow 8 feet long, but it's lean and athletic. Perentis will happily scavenge on a putrid carcass. But easy meals like this rotting kangaroo are rare. Most of the time, the Perenti must hunt down live prey. Luckily, it's built to kill. The Perenti tracks its prey using its long tongue, which picks up chemical signals in the air. They also have excellent eyesight, but its real weapon is speed. Perentis have a turbocharged breathing system which pumps air into their lungs when they need to really move. Reaching speeds of up to 25 miles per hour, the Perenti is faster than most Olympic sprinters. This means they can run down even the fastest prey, like rabbits. This is no lounge lizard. It's the Ferrari of the reptile world. Australia's Perentis aren't even the biggest stone-cold killers on the island continent. People travel to northern Australia to explore its natural beauty. For the residents of the forest, these waterways provide life. But not every visitor to the river gets out alive. These murky waters are home to a true monster, the largest living reptile on Earth, the saltwater crocodile. Up to 23 feet long and weighing over a ton, covered in thick scales and armed with a snout full of wicked teeth. Their bite is the strongest of any living animal on Earth. Anything it can't swallow whole is clamped in these terrifyingly strong jaws. And with powerful shakes of the Salty's head, ripped into pieces. But these massive predators can be surprisingly stealthy and cunning, considering the largest are longer than the average car. The huge beasts are like lethal submarines, nearly invisible in murky water, with eyes above the surface. They mostly feed on small prey, but anything that comes near the water is on this river monster's menu. This goose was snatched off the riverbank before it knew what hit it. The crocodile's teeth are not razor sharp like a shark's. They pierce and grip the goose's body so the powerful jaws can crush it. Crocodiles can't swallow when they're submerged, otherwise their throat and lungs would fill with water. So it stays above the surface and swallows the 10-pound goose whole. But it's not just careless animals coming down to the river's edge that risk becoming lunch for a hungry Salty. You wouldn't think this fruit bat is in any danger resting high in a tree, but underestimate Salties at your peril. They're not just lumbering brutes. All that power makes them surprisingly athletic. Using their massive tails to generate speed, Salties can lift their bodies out of the water and snatch animals from the trees. A fully grown saltwater crocodile is the undisputed king of this piece of paradise. Prey of the world. Take note of these ruthless killers. When you venture out into the wilds of the world, whether it be the ocean, the forest, or just the tree next door, beware. You never know which one of these predators may be lurking to take a bite. In cold blood.